We're going to do, before we get started, a little bit of what we call Davar ha'omed ala perek. Something that's current, that I just felt we need to explore for a moment, and then we'll learn what we normally learn. So, I stand to be corrected, but I'm pretty certain the very last time that the Jewish people were threatened by Persia was the Purim story.
Yes.
Yeah, I think you'd agree, right? And it just struck me, something really fascinating struck me about this, because unfortunately our history, and it's the month of Av, so we tend to focus a little bit on the tragedy of our history. So unfortunately our history is full of occasions of nations who try to attack us. It's not even news to us. What is unusual is when an enemy wants to, God forbid, attack the Jewish people, and they announce in advance when they plan to do it. That's not so common. And that takes us again back to the story of when Persia wanted to harm the Jewish people, because Haman, the Gemara tells us very clearly, decided a particular time when he wanted to attack us. And the Megillah says that he established months in advance that on this particular date, that's when we're going to attack the Jewish people. And strategically, it's not a great strategy to announce when you plan to attack. The element of surprise is usually one of the most important strategic assets of an enemy. And it implies a certain degree of confidence that they can tell us when they plan to attack us, because they believe that there's nothing that we could do to stop them. That's at least, if nothing else, the psychological intent of saying when you plan to attack. Now, in Haman's case, it wasn't purely psychological. The Gemara tells us that he did his pur, he did his lottery to decide when is the correct time to attack the Jewish people. And he came to the conclusion that when's the best time on the calendar? Adar. Now, we look at that and we say, what, are you crazy? How could you choose Adar? It's the best month on the calendar. Like, Haman, did you not know anything about Judaism? But that's because we have the benefit of hindsight. We're looking at the month of Adar through the lens of a post-Purim reality. But try and imagine what it was like as a Jewish person living any time from when the Jews got into Eretz Yisrael until the Purim story happened. What do you think went through people's minds annually when they came to the month of Adar? Moshe's Yortzeit. That was a defining aspect of the month of Adar. So I don't know how joyous the month of Adar was prior to Purim. I'm not saying it was a bad month. There's a particular midrash that speaks about the idea of Yaakov and Esav. Right from the beginning, we're told Lo'oim milo'oim yematz, that they're going to battle against each other, and we say Kishazeh kom, Zeh noifel, when the one is dominant, then the other is weakened. But there's an interesting discussion around that everything was divided between Yaakov and Esav, including the months of the year. And the implication was that originally the month of Adar was in the domain of Esav. It was originally intended to be a good month for them, not for us. In the same way, obviously, as this time of the year. And then what happened is Haman arrives on the scene, and he analyzes this month, and he comes to the conclusion that this is a bad time for the Jews. It is fascinating. He did not choose the month of Av. He did not choose the month of Tammuz. He didn't choose the month of Cheshvan, which, really is a month without any Yom Tovs, even though there was the initiation of the Beis HaMikdash. So, or at least the Gemara speaks about when Mashiach comes, there will be the initiation of the Beis HaMikdash. So, why did he choose the month of Adar? Why did he choose the month of Adar? Because in his mind, Moshe represents the liberator of the Jews, the person who allows us the opportunity to escape from our enemies, the person who takes us out of Golus. And if Moshe passes away in the month of Adar, then that implies that the energy of escape, the energy of breaking free of our enemies, or emerging from a Golus, ended in the month of Adar. That's how he perceived it. This is where all the good things stopped. So the great period of the Jews, having left Egypt, experienced all of the miracles, the splitting of the sea, 40 years in the desert, the great prophecies of Moshe, the giving of the Torah, all of that stopped, in his view, when Moshe Rabbeinu passed away in Chodesh Adar. So what did he miss? So what he missed is that Moshe Rabbeinu was also born in the month of Adar. Now the question is, how does that help? Being born predates passing away. Isn't that exactly Haman's point? Isn't that exactly his point? Yes, of course, there was a Moshe Rabbeinu, and he was born at a particular point in time. But then he left this world. So whatever he brought into this world, surely, that's it. It's over. Because Moshe passed away. So Rashi makes a very interesting observation on that Gemara, and he says that Kedai Haleda Lechaper Ala Misa. It's a very interesting expression. That the birth of Moshe Rabbeinu is so potent that it can even cleanse or atone the passing of Moshe Rabbeinu, which means that Moshe entering into the world fundamentally changes the world. It really doesn't matter what the details are thereafter. It fundamentally changes the world. The world is now a place of Geula, of the Jewish people emerging as the chosen nation, etc., etc. That's changed forever. So what happens? As the Megillah tells us, that this is the month that used to be a month of despair that was turned into a month of joy. Now there's an interesting debate in the Gemara in Sanhedrin, and it's a four-way debate, so we're not going to get into all the details, but one of the opinions, part of the debate is between Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Eliezer, and Rabbi Eliezer says that what's going to happen is that if the Jewish people do not do teshuvah at the end of time, then Hashem is going to send a king whose decrees will be as harsh as the decrees of Haman, and that will cause the Jewish people to do teshuvah, and then Mashiach will come, because we have to do teshuvah in order for Mashiach to come. So he'll send a king whose decrees are as serious as Haman. You know what's fascinating about Haman's decree? Well, on the one hand, what's fascinating is obviously he had the capacity to attack more Jews than anybody else in history because everybody lived under Achashverosh's empire. But what's most fascinating about it is that even though he had such a tremendous threat, ultimately he wasn't able to touch the hair on the head of one Jew during his whole period, until eventually he was killed. So it was a very loud and very frightening threat that actually amounted to nothing. And so the Gemara is implying that there's going to be somebody like Haman. And of course you can't help but see the regional link as well, right? That you've got Persia emerging in its current form as this, Iranian regime, which is geographical and historical Persia, basically, reaching out with this threat against the Jewish nation in a way that we haven't seen ever since the time of Haman in a certain respect. And what's interesting is they've done the same thing. So you see, I'm sure everybody here has been watching the news. They've announced when they intend to attack. They said specifically that they want to attack in the month of Av. I mean, the fact that they have this knowledge is incredible. And they even spoke about Tisha B'Av because they're saying it's a time that will inflict so much psychological damage on the Jewish nation because of the history that's associated with it. And they know for sure that the month of Av is a terrible time for the Jewish people. We know historically everybody's on edge. You start the 9 days and everybody's on edge. So they're kind of capitalizing on our collective angst at this time of the year and playing it up. Now the only person who ever did that really in history was Haman, saying this is a bad time for the Jewish people. I'm going to tell you in advance what my plan is, and wanted to attack us. Now we know there's a medrash that tells us a very strange medrash that says at the time the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, there was some Jew with his non-Jewish friend, and they were standing in the middle of a farm, and the cow made a strange noise, and the non-Jewish person said to the Jewish person that that's a sign that your temple is being destroyed. And then a few moments later, still on Tisha B'Av, the cow made a different noise, and he said that's a sign that your Redeemer has been born, which obviously doesn't mean that Mashiach is 2,000 something years old. Rather, it means that the concept of Geula, the capacity to recover from the Churban and to be able to come to Mashiach, that was born out of the ashes of the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash. So the month of Av really is now like the month of Adar was in the time of Purim, meaning to say a time of the year that has this great potential for tremendous bracha, not just bracha, but this turning around of the negative into positive. The potential is there. And now we're seeing a person playing the role, like the role of Haman will be played by the Iranian regime. That's saying this is your bad time and therefore we're going to attack you. And all that should come to our minds is this Gemara saying, there's going to be this king like Haman that's going to get us to do tshuva and that's going to bring Mashiach. Bearing in mind that Tisha B'Av is very much associated with Mashiach. We say Nachem on Tisha B'Av, we don't say Tachnun on Tisha B'Av because it's associated with Mashiach. Some people have a tradition after Chatzos that they clean their homes on Tisha B'Av afternoon because you're supposed to prepare for Mashiach to come. So there's this tremendous energy, right? And so it just really should encourage all of us at the same time as we can't underestimate how serious the situation is. And that's why we really have to put in a lot of effort and daven and do all the various things that we have to do to shift that energy. But we should do so with a sense of trust in Hashem that if we put in our part, then with Hashem, we could see a Purim, 5784, kind of please God, where Hashem turns around the Av to be a Menachem Av and turns the month from, as Adar went from Yogoin Lesimcha, from Afela or Gadol, from darkness to light, from despair to rejoicing. So please God, this Tisha B'Av, as somebody put very glibly, but I thought very profoundly, that if Simchas Torah felt like Tisha B'Av, then Hashem can give us a Tisha B'Av which we could celebrate like Simchas Torah. It's Hashem.